Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this month's Audit Committee meeting. Do we have any apologies?
No apologies, convener. All members are present.
Are there any declarations of interest from anyone? No? Okay. Moving on to the minutes. Have we all read the minutes? And do we have any things to raise from the minutes? Matters arising, spelling mistakes, anything? No? Do we all agree them then? Thank you. Rolling action log.
Thank you, convener. There's two items in the rolling action log, both to do with previous reports the committee had on the Legionella compliance update, both stating that our reports are due at the September meeting. I think any questions relating to Legionella will come up in the next item to do with the internal audit progress. So it's probably as well just to note just now there's two reports due in September.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5. Isabel, for you to move the report, please.
Okay, morning everybody. The purpose of the report is to provide an update on where we are with completing our 23-24 internal audit plan. The plan was agreed by committee in April 2023. Paragraph 4.2 sets out the workload, including the other client work undertaken. A summary of progress relating to the 23 assignment areas is at Appendix 1. Paragraph 5.1 provides an update on the internal audit resourcing issues that we've had. That's to say, I'm happy to report that the new member of staff is settling in well. Paragraph 5.2 summarises what audit reports have been completed, are in progress and are still to be started, with paragraph 5.3 highlighting that internal audit resource must be applied with some flexibility. 2 new pieces of work have been requested and are currently underway. Twice a year, I report outstanding internal audit recommendations to the committee. The results of this exercise can be seen at Appendix 3, which provides details of 8 recommendations outstanding at the 31st of March. I'd also like to draw members' attention to paragraphs 5.6, 5.7 and 5.8, which relate to our continuous auditing work. I will report back to committee once all the data is available.
I think you've gone mute.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. I'm not sure where you got to. Did you hear twice a year I report outstanding internal audit recommendations? I'll go from there.
Yes.
So the outstanding recommendations are at Appendix 3, and I'd like to draw attention to paragraphs 5, 6, 5, 7, 5, 8, which relate to our continuous audit and work. If members could note the recommendations and conclusions, that is that progress with completing the 23-24 internal audit plan has been delayed due to a vacancy and the recent changes in workload. The work has been undertaken, however, will contribute to the provision of a balanced and evidence-based year-end opinion. Members should also note the number of outstanding recommendations and the action taken regarding the continuous auditing work. Thank you. I'll take any questions, happy to try and answer.
Thank you, Isabel. Councillor Meikle-John.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to ask a wee bit about the 2 reviews that have been brought forward into the plan, Isabel, and I understand that the reasons for the services doing that, but I just wonder about the scope and the timescale, particularly for reporting back, and what type of report that members will be able to expect coming back.
Yeah, sometimes as part of our internal audit work, as mentioned just earlier in my summary there, the internal audit plan has to be quite flexible, because you never know when other pieces of work are going to come in and be requested. That could be advice consultancy, whatever that looks like. And yes, there are 2 pieces of work that have been introduced into the plan. They're being treated as fact-finding exercises, so that's just trying to go back through the history of those particular areas and looking at what happened and when that happened. They are ongoing at the moment, so there is no date in mind other than we are prioritising them. And they will be reported as we do normally to committee. So the audits will be treated as an audit in the normal way that we would, and those summaries would come back through committee.
Okay, thank you for that. And there was also a wee bit around the 3 reviews that have yet to be started and deferred into the 24-25 audit plan. Will they be given an element of priority as they move into the next plan because they've been deferred? And I'm just want to know a wee bit about the potential for this to be an ongoing issue of things constantly having to be deferred into future years, and then it's about the capacity of the audit team going forward.
Yes, absolutely. The audit reviews that are being deferred we obviously timetable all our work as part of the year, and it changes throughout the year for all the reasons we've already spoken about. So it's a look all the time at where things can be penciled in, and yes, they will absolutely be prioritised going into 24-25. The next paper on the agenda is the plan, so you'll see that they're there, and yeah, absolutely they will be. In terms of capacity, it's one of these things, isn't it? It's we have the plan, we start with great intentions, and then things can change throughout the year, and it is more about how we deal with those changes. Resourcing wise, we'll speak more about under the plan being the next paper and what we tried to do in that timetable and in. But yes, capacity, it's always going to be an issue. It's more about how we deal with that and try to prioritise the work that's there, because you never know what's going to happen with resources or other pieces of work or other things that happen through the year. Hopefully that tries to answer.
Yeah, I think for the committee, I think it's more about making sure that there's enough capacity and time given to the work in order to give us the assurance that's needed in the current plan in particular, but also going forward, Isabel. So I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Our plan is quite, well, you'll see it is coming up. It's quite the only thing that impacts probably on our capacity is the work that we also do at Clackmannanshire Council, because we have a full plan that we take there too, and we have a resource commitment to that plan. Obviously, there is an internal auditor at Clacks, and we use our Falkirk Council resources to help complete that plan at Clacks. So in terms of capacity, our work in terms of what we do with our annually recurring work, our other client work within the Falkirk plan, we know what we're doing with that, and other than things like resourcing or a change in audits, that's not really going to impact on our capacity to do that work. It is more probably the Clacks plan that would impede on that if we were having to spend a lot more time on the Clacks work.
You know, maybe can speak a wee bit more about that in the plan coming forward, but I think I'll leave it there just now, knowing that there's other questions.
Thank you. Amanda would like to speak as well.
Thank you, convener. We will come back to it in the audit plan, but I suppose it was just to give committee some reassurance that when Isabel was pulling the plan together, we agreed that at the end of the summer we would have a full review of our resources, and particularly the impact of the work on particularly Clackmannanshire Council and how we want to take that contract forward. We've also notified Clacks that we're going to be doing that piece of work as well. And so we are recognising the impact that that's happening sorry, the impact that that's having, and we have said that we'll review it this year. Yes.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, convener. My issue is with Appendix 3, looking at the situation in terms of the Legionella situation. Obviously, we've had the historic reasons for the issues discussed at the Audit Committee in the past, so I don't think we need to rehash that. But there is some concern that some of the dates have not been achieved in these issues, and that there's been a slowing in the progress of getting a team set up. I wonder if we could have some assurance about the processes. We are expecting a report in September, but it's about the current processes to ensure that that is absolutely delivered. I think that may be a question for Mr. Benny.
Malcolm?
Thank you, convener. So just to say the primary reason why those work plans are in amber at the moment is because the initial recruitment for the Legionella officer was unsuccessful, and you'll see in the narrative that was provided by officers at the time that it said that these timescales were dependent on successful recruitment of an officer. So I'm pleased to update that we do have a Legionella officer in place, and we're making good progress, and the council's in a far stronger and more compliant position than it was 6 months ago, or whenever we last discussed that at the Audit Committee. But we are 3 months behind schedule because we had to re-recruit for the role. I'm happy with the progress that's being made, and I think you'll see in the audit plan it says outcomes still expected to be achieved. So we're still working towards the goal. It's just that initial recruitment wasn't successful.
Thank you.
Councillor Spears?
Yes, just to say, I hope the ongoing safeguard and procedures are being carried out at present. But this report is the council's compliance is a statutory duty. So this delay, you can assure us we'll have this report by September.
Through you, convener, I don't think there's any suggestion that the report isn't coming to the September committee, and that was included in the action plan that you've just reviewed.
Councillor Spears, does that answer your question?
Well, half of the question, just that all procedures are being carried out at present.
Through you, convener, the updates in the paper about how the team is working through all the actions that came out of the previous audit, and that we are in a far stronger position. We are 3 months behind where we had hoped to be at this point.
Thank you, Malcolm.
I'm talking about the physical procedures, especially in schools and public buildings.
Through you, convener, I'll get Paul Kettrick to send Councillor Spears an update on the ongoing activity.
Convener, just on that, could I then just ask Mr. Benny if we can have an assurance that there will be no further slippage? I appreciate the challenges around the recruitment, but now that the recruitment has been done, I think that's what the committee is really looking for, is an assurance that there'll be no further slippage, and everything, all the outstanding actions should be completed as per the plan by the 30th of September.
Through you, convener, I think it's a difficult question. My view would be we have a plan. We are working towards that plan. It is our goal to deliver everything that we had hoped to achieve by September, but I don't wish to make any guarantees, because I'm not aware what what we may encounter between now and September. I think it's only right that officers have the ability to update elected members if something is found which takes us longer than we had anticipated. But there's absolutely no suggestion that we are not prioritising this work. And I know that the team meet regularly and that we've established the compliance team and obviously recruited this officer, and we're making progress as fast as we possibly can.
Councillor Forrest.
Just a very simple one here. Pages 22 and 24. Can it be explained what the symbols allocated to each of the outstanding recommendations represent? The yellow triangle and the red octagon. It's not one I've seen before.
Yeah, the Appendix 3 recommendations, those individual tables are taken straight from Pintana, which is our performance monitoring system. So those symbols come straight from there, and they're just like every other RAG status, if you like. So there's a limited and so an amber, and then the red where we're maybe overdue. Now, it's probably important just to say that the report was obviously pulled together at an earlier stage with the date of the 31st of March in mind. So these were just pulled prior to that. So they showed the ones that were going to be. But obviously, as you're looking at it, the longer that goes on, the more likely they're all going to be as sitting as red rather than as the amber.
Yeah, so the shapes mean nothing. It's just purely red, amber, green.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought someone had maybe had a wee bit artistic license. Thank you.
Sorry, just on that, just a wee bit more understanding. It's just each of the sections there, whether they're irrespective of amber or red, it's no assurance.
No.
I just think, okay, we're probably laymen rather than the professionals in Pintana, but that might be more helpful to give us an indication of what that level is. And that we're maybe just, the ambers maybe we're just about there, but the reds were not there. Just an observation as much as anything.
Yeah, I can see why that would be confusing. The no assurances is in relation to the audit, so that's showing that the audit was a no assurance report rather than each individual recommendation. But no, I totally accept it. That looks a bit confusing.
Thank you, Isabel. I know I may be belabouring the point here, but with Appendix 3, firstly, can I ask, has the property compliance team now been established, Malcolm?
It has.
So then you can give us assurance then that 16th of September is what the date says in the roll log. You should be able to have these recommendations.
I will have a report for you in September on progress against the action plan that was agreed in response to the audit. Well, I guess the question that was put to me was, can I confirm that every single thing will be completed by that point? That is my intention, but I can't predict what will happen over the next 3 or 4 months, but I'll have a report for you and you'll be able to scrutinise what myself and my team have done to respond to the original audit.
Thank you, Paul. I apologise for belabouring the point, but it is a serious matter when it comes to health and safety. My final very quick question is for Isabel. I assume that when you're talking about red, amber, green, you're talking about the RAG risk system as opposed to the assurance system. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Are we happy to note and agree this section? Okay. And we move on to the internal audit plan.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me all right this time. So thanks, convener. The second report from Internal Audit today sets out the proposed programme of work for 24-25 for approval. This plan takes account of the joint working agreement with Clackmannanshire Council, details of which are set out in paragraph 4.1. There's a separate internal audit plan there which will be approved by Clackmannanshire Council's elected members. Paragraphs 4.2 and 4.3 provide an update on the resource issues faced in the last year. The resources we've got available for delivering our planned programme of work at Falkirk are set out at the table at paragraph 5.4. This is a reduction in resource from last year to take into account that the new member of staff is part-time and also requires time to bed into their new role. The plan is split into 3 categories. That's annually recurring assignments, which are pieces of work we're committed to doing on a rolling annual basis. Most of these are externally driven, regulatory type reviews. Committed assignments, which are the audits we'll commit to completing this year, and other client work, which is the audit work we undertake for our other clients under the umbrella of Falkirk Council. Further details on each can be found at paragraph 5.5. The assignments that make up each element of the plan are set out at appendices 1 to 3. I've tried to give a little bit of detail on what the scope for each is likely to be, though again this may change once we start properly planning each assignment over the course of the year. The process for planning, undertaking and reporting on each individual assignment remains the same as in previous years and is set out at paragraphs 5.7 to 5.11. 5.12 highlights that each year an internal audit assurance report is presented to committee. Internal audit will give an overall opinion on the Council's risk management, governance and control arrangements based on the work that internal audit has undertaken over the course of the year, and that will be at the next audit committee in June. The report will also provide a summary of all the work undertaken in 2023-24. I draw your attention to the recommendations of paragraph 2.1. In particular, can I ask that committee approves the internal audit plan for the year, but to bear in mind the resources available to internal audit and the need for the plan to be flexible. Internal audit will direct resources to where they're most needed and progress will be reported to audit committee on an ongoing basis. So to finish, I'd like to take a second to thank the internal audit team in completing the 23-24 audit work when there's always more to do, but also for their involvement in preparing the 24-25 plan at a time when the focus is always on completing the plan from the year before. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank those many colleagues and services that assisted us to develop the plan and provide us with information that we require to produce our plans and reports. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Councillor Meiklejohn.
Thank you, Convener. Again, Isabel, it's really around capacity and ensuring that there's capacity to complete the plan, because notwithstanding the comments that have been made on the previous item from Mrs Templeman, which I think was really helpful to know that we're reviewing the arrangements with Clackmannanshire around their plan. I noticed that we've got a reduction of around 20 days from last year to this year. Can I ask a wee bit more about why we've had that reduction in days, recognising that we've now had to defer a number of items into next year, and we talk about having flexibility to be able to take into account changing circumstances in the year, just to why we've reduced the overall number of days?
Yeah, that's fine, no problem. So when we work up the plan, we have our number of people who obviously work with an internal audit, and we allocate a number of days from each person to build up the picture for all. So overall, the years going back, that has fluctuated depending on whether we've had full-time staff, part-time staff. And so when someone is part-time, that obviously has an impact. And you'll see that, well, last year I think it was 555 days, so yeah, 535 this year, so we've reduced by 20. One of the other things that probably has happened latterly, certainly just after the pandemic, we because meetings weren't happening as regularly and there were delays in being able to undertake the work, the length of time between committees was longer and the committees were coming later, which meant that our updates were happening later in the year. And this is another example of us trying to get back to where we were pre-pandemic, so bringing all the dates in line. So without trying to make it sound overcomplicated, those deferred audits that we were speaking about earlier, they could sit, if we continued on with our 23-24 plan, we could say that they are completed in 23-24, but that takes longer for us to start our 24-25 programme of work. So that could have been an additional 3 audits that we would have been trying to fit in there. And just to be quite honest, I'm trying to pull it back into that we start in April with a new plan and we aren't still working on our 23-24 audits or any other year's work that maybe has been carried forward. So it's a bit of an attempt to bring everything back into line and just be accepting of the fact that we don't have the same resource. We do have capacity because this is the internal audit team's role and this is their focus, and it will continue to be, and as I said earlier, the assurance is there that those audits will be completed. Around the CLAC's internal audit plan, we work with that one really closely too. They have quite a lot of delays in their audits, and we are trying to work with them to bring those dates back in line. And if that happens, again, that impacts on our capacity for Falkirk and increases that. Hopefully that's given you a wee bit more comfort.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it goes just to demonstrate that it's not as straightforward at all. It's been quite complex. One other question that I've got, which is in relation to AO8 on the former the emerging plan. It's really about when do we go back and check when we've done some pieces of work, because we're aware that from the housing regulator's annual assurance statement there has been concerns raised in relation to smoke detectors and gas checks, etc. And they tend to be a wee bit recurring. And while we've got performance data on that, when do internal audit go back and check that the risk hasn't changed around that? Just for outstanding actions that are probably, for very good reasons, difficult to completely mitigate, but just make sure that we are continuing to mitigate them as much as possible.
There's probably a couple of things there, and that we try to, obviously our plan is risk-based, so, and we only have that capacity that we've spoken about to do our audit work, so we have to think really carefully about what we can include there. If things come out through the year and there are changes, we obviously look at them and we provide advice, consultancy, we'll attend working groups. So in general terms, if things come up, we try to find a space to be able to do that work. In terms of our outstanding recommendations, we report them here twice a year. We've got that piece of work in there about the additional outstanding about recommendations and making sure that they're closed off. And one of the things that we've always done is we've always reported back on the outstanding recommendations, but what we haven't been able to do probably so much in the past is go back and look at the ones that have been closed and see if that still is the case, and if when they were closed that everything had been done as we would expect it to be, or indeed if some of that work had been superseded. So the new review is an attempt to try and go back and look at some of those. We speak about there, it's our grade 1 recommendations, and our grade 1 recommendations are our riskiest recommendations, so they're the ones that are the most significant and tend to be the ones that we look to get implemented as quickly as possible. And so they're the ones that we would at this point target to go back and have a look at. So the things that you mentioned are things that maybe would fall within that area.
Thank you for that, Isabel. Thank you, convener. That was the answer I was kind of looking for. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. I wonder if you could maybe say just a bit more about the grade 1 recommendations, explaining kind of what they are. You've mentioned a bit about it, and also why it's necessary to go back and look as far back as 2019, since you report on an annual basis. Why is there a need to go back to 2019 to check that they've been closed correctly? But it's also a wee bit more clarity about what the grade 1 recommendations are.
Yeah, no problem. So we have 3 grades of recommendations, and probably one of the things I should say right away is that we didn't used to grade our recommendations. It was recommended through our public sector internal audit standards, external assessment that happens every 5 years. And it was suggested in one of those recommendations that we do that. And that's the reason that we've chosen 2019, is that's when we started with the recommendations and the grading and the way that we do them now. So it's really something that we've never gone back and done, just to make sure that it's worked the way that it should have done. So we've got the 3 grades of recommendations. They were introduced as part of that recommendation. And as I've said earlier, they are the most significant. They tend to come up in our limited assurance reports or our no assurance reports, because you can imagine in a substantial assurance report, there may be some recommendations, but you wouldn't expect to see a lot of urgent necessary recommendations if we're then given it a substantial assurance. If, on the other hand, we're given it a limited assurance or a no assurance, you would like to think that there are more pressing issues in there, and maybe a lot more significant weaknesses or gaps that need to be actioned right away. So the grade 1s are just an immediate show in a report to show that that's something that we need to take quick action on within the services. The reason that we're looking at them, and we've never looked at them before, is part of that overall review of we've never done it because of when we started doing it, but also just to get some comfort for ourselves around the recommendations that aren't always just outstanding, to make sure that we have taken all that action that we've been required. We have done some audit work in the past where we've gone back to check exactly where our audit recommendations are sitting, and we found a couple where they've maybe been closed off in Pintana, and they maybe shouldn't have been because maybe all the actions hadn't been taken at that time. So we just want to give ourselves a bit of comfort, as well as yourselves, that everything is being closed off properly, and that if there is anything more that we need to do to ensure that Pintana is being kept up to date, is that would come out of that review.
Thank you for that. Can I just clarify, because you say you now grade the recommendations as grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, but I've not seen that in any of the reports. Is that going to be included in future reports?
It's not something that we have included in reports, because you obviously get a summary of the findings from each of the reports. So you would maybe find out about the number of recommendations, for example, if you were asking questions around specific ones. So normally in the progress report, we will give you the summary of the findings from the last audit, from the audit completion. So you would get the assurance level. It tends to state how many recommendations there were, what they were, but no, it's not something that we've ever given you as the grading of the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? No. Happy to agree this report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And we'll go on to our final item. I'm not sure who's presenting this one. Pauline.
Yes, convener, I am. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The paper I'm bringing to you this morning is our annual audit plan for the 23-24 audit. At paragraph 1 of the plan, it outlines the main elements of the audit work and what that will include for this year. I'll take the paper as read, so I won't go through it in too much detail. It follows a similar format to plans that members will have seen in previous years. The first thing just to bring to your attention is that Exhibit 1 of the plan, so that's at paragraph 12. That outlines the materiality levels that the team will be working towards in carrying out our audit work this year. Materiality, or overall planning materiality for the audit, has been set at £17.2 million, and that equates to 2% of gross expenditure. So that figure is based on the audited figures from the 22-23 accounts. When we receive the unaudited accounts for 23-24, we will revise that figure based on that 2%. We also have something that's referred to as performance materiality. So that's been set at 10.3 million, and that equates to 60% of the overall materiality. That's essentially it's a trigger point for the audit team. So if we identify errors or misstatements that start to approach that level, that's the point at which we'd consider whether we need to undertake additional audit work to assure ourselves that there's not a material error in the accounts. And finally, 340,000, that's the reporting threshold. So that's the level at which I would report to this committee as those charged with governance any misstatements in the accounts. And that would come back to you in the formal annual audit report. The next thing to highlight is Exhibit 2 of the report. So that's just underneath at paragraph 15. We have one significant risk of material misstatement to bring to your attention. That comes out of the planning and risk assessment work that the team have undertaken. So this risk here is in line with auditing standards ISO 240, and it's a risk of management override of the systems of control. So that's a standard risk that we're required to include in all annual audit plans, and it simply recognises the unique position that management are in to override any controls. In the final column of that table, you'll see our planned audit response. So that's a number of audit procedures that the team will carry out through the various stages of the audit, and we'll report back to you on the findings of that work as part of the annual audit report. We are also required by auditing standards to consider the presumed risk of fraud in relation to revenue and expenditure in the financial statements. And you'll see there in paragraphs 16 to 19, the reasons why we have rebutted that risk of significant risk of material misstatement due to fraud. A number of different reasons there that are outlined. What essentially that means is we will carry out our normal audit procedures over the revenue and expenditure transactions, but we don't require to do any additional work in relation to any significant risk. Then at paragraph 22, we've got some other areas of audit focus. These are similar to previous years, so they're in relation to the estimations in the valuation of land and buildings and pension assets and liabilities. This basically recognises the significant level of subjectivity and professional judgment involved in both those valuations, and we rely heavily on the work of management's experts in those areas. So those are the valuers and also the pension fund actuary. The next section of the report relates to wider scope and best value. Members will be aware that public sector audit considers more than just the financial statements. We also consider the 4 wider scope areas that are outlined at paragraph 31. We will report back on our findings on those in our annual audit report in October. You'll also be aware that this is year 2 of a revised approach to best value for local authorities, where we undertake each year a thematic review. For year 2, which this is, we are looking at workforce innovation. And again, the team are working on a report based on that, and we'll bring that back to committee at a later date. Finally, the last section of the report is the reporting arrangements, the timetable and the audit fee. So you see there at appendices, exhibits 4 and 5, we have the proposed timetable for the various pieces of work that we'll carry out to enable us to get to a sign-off date in October. Don't plan to go into any more detail, but I'm happy to take any questions on the plan. Thank you.
Councillor Mitico-John. Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Pauline. My first question is actually the Chief Executive. It's actually around the wider scope and the vision, leadership and governance, and to how elected members will be able to be engaged and participate within that aspect of the audit, and indeed be able to contribute to the work of the council going forward.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, leader. I mean, in terms of the wider scope, these are, of course, the themes we're familiar with from the annual audit process. And I think that with elected members, both in this committee and elsewhere, we're able to pretty open discussions and considerations about the progress that we're making, both in terms of the thematic audits, which Pauline mentioned, which are now going to be on an annual basis, and I think give us really interesting insights. I mean, last year was the leadership was the theme, this year's workforce. Really interesting insights to matters that are of significant importance to us as a council, particularly given the scale and the nature of the challenges that we face. Also, of course, and it is mentioned in the report, the fact that the best value report is going to the Accounts Commission. In fact, this coming Thursday, that will also come back to committee. I think that in line with our previous practice on this, we'll bring it into the council so that all members have the opportunity to consider that. But as you know, that will also bring the necessary reports back into audit to enable the further discussion to take place. I suppose the only other thing I'd say, and this was perhaps part of the point you were trying to make, Councillor Meikle-John, is that, since the last election, I think we've endeavoured informally also just to spend time with elected members, considering the nature of the challenges and issues we face and how we work collaboratively to deal with these. And of course, collaborative leadership was both, I suppose, the single most significant issue arising from the previous best value audit, and an ongoing challenge for us, given the nature and scale of decisions which members have to take. So I think from an officer point of view, we welcome the fact that we're, I think, more able, perhaps than previously, to have these sort of open and collaborative conversations about the work that we're doing, the work being highlighted by both our external and internal auditors and the challenges we face. I'm not sure if that quite answers the question, but happy to come back if more is required.
No, I'm content with that, just to ensure that it's highlighted that elected members need to be involved and that they're going to be quite fundamental to the process, particularly with the very challenging financial environment that we're in, and they need to actually take some really difficult decisions. And this is something that is going to be ongoing for some time yet. The other aspect I was going to ask to Pauline was around the thematic reviews and the workforce innovation, and to whether or not that would be run in tandem with the audit, and whether or not they are looking to the ongoing work around workforce planning that's being carried out through COSLA at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, so the work on the Year 2 thematic on workforce innovation has been carried out alongside the financial audit. So we rely on the work of our colleagues in the performance audit and best value part of Audit Scotland. So they've been working alongside the local financial audit team, meeting various members of management to conclude in that work. My understanding is the team are almost finished it. We have a meeting later on this week to discuss the emerging messages and the findings from it. So once that's been concluded, a management report will be drafted and it'll be brought to the various governance channels, this committee, and I'm presuming to council as well. So yes, that work is well progressed for this year.
Okay. And just looking at what's going on elsewhere in local government and the workforce planning and around COSLA, has that been drawn into the thematic reports as well?
So each of the local authorities will have their own individual thematic report on the theme, and then it'll be for the controller of audit to consider how best to report that, whether it comes together in a national report that pulls out the key messages from across all of the local authorities to get an overarching picture of what. And it's not just about workforce strategy. It's the title of and the scope of it's quite specific. It's about workforce innovation. So it's about thinking further than the workforce strategy and how to best make the use of resources with, you know, challenging financial position and other kind of innovative ways of looking at how to make best use of resources. So yes, across the national picture, it'll pull together all those key messages.
I was really just trying to look at where we've got the opportunity to work together, and we're not duplicating work with the work that's going on through the other work streams, because it would make sense to bring all that work together to make it much more cohesive. But thank you, Polly. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Pauline. I think actually my first questions might not be to yourself, but I'm a little confused about what committee is being asked to do here. Normally we have a covering report with recommendations, but there is no covering report with this. Could I have some clarification as to what exactly the committee is being asked to do here?
Thank you. If I recall correctly, I think we're just noting this report. External audit will set their own plan. We don't get to approve that plan as such, so we are really just noting the report, which is why there's no covering report. Apologies. Okay,
thank you, Amanda. And a question for yourself, Pauline. I mean, there is obviously, we're now. I understand why there's previously been some slippage in terms of the dates for reporting, but we're now kind of 2 years out of COVID, and we're still looking at not meeting the statutory deadline. I wonder if you could say a bit more about that, and is this going to be an ongoing issue? What's causing the delay, and what's the implications?
Yes, thank you. Just to point out that the timetable for this year does represent an improvement on last year. Well, we're not back to our pre-COVID timetable. Last year we signed off in November. This year we're planning to sign off in October. So that is an incremental improvement, which is what we're trying to achieve. And we've taken the viewpoint in this route this year of the audit appointment. You'll recall that last year was the first year of this appointment. Which inevitably there are delays and there's quite a bit of additional work that auditors have to do in year one, so that the timing of it was quite difficult. There were also additional auditing standard requirements for us that we had to carry out last year. Also, we had the introduction of the new best value programme. So there were, without making excuses, there were additional challenges in year one of the audit appointment that meant we weren't quite able to make the progress that we'd wanted to do. For year two of the audit appointment round for this year, Audit Scotland has taken the approach in line with the Accounts Commission and the Auditor General that we undertake a programme of prioritisation of audits. So certain audits will be done earlier and will be prioritised. Mainly those are NHS bodies and central government agencies because they are consolidated into Scottish Government's accounts. Then we move on to other audits. So for Falkirk Council, we have been able to make an incremental improvement. However, because there's also the Falkirk Pension Fund, which gives assurances to the other bodies that are participating employers in the pension fund, I, as the appointed auditor of the pension fund, have to give assurances to all those bodies. So what that means is we have to prioritise the pension fund before the council, if that makes sense, in order for me to give assurances to the council and sign off on the council. So there's quite a bit of prioritisation and working through the timetable to make sure all the moving parts fit in and to make sure all the assurances can be given at the appropriate time. So for this year, I hope members are assured that we are seeing a month's improvement in the timetable, and we will continue to work on that for next year. And my hope would be that for next year we'd be able to sign off by the statutory deadline of the end of September. But we have certainly made progress this year. I think it's just the element, and Isabel had mentioned in part of our discussion of the challenges in internal audit. it's almost self-perpetuating. If you have a delay in 1 year and it slips into next year, it means, you know, if you're not signing off till later, it means the team can't start planning for the next year until later, and it's quite difficult for us to gradually pull that back. The auditing standards are very, very specific in what we have to do, so there's not an awful lot of scope for us to cut back in some of the work that we do. So there's certain things that we absolutely have to do to be in line with auditing standards. So just to summarise, hopefully members are assured that we are making a bit more progress this year in the timetable, and we'll continue that into next year. Overall, Audit Scotland's proposal is that by the end of this appointment round, all audits will be signed off by their pre-COVID timetable broadly, and certainly in line with statutory deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one last small point, and it relates to previous reports as well. We are changing the dates for the audit committee meetings for the next session, and as far as we can see, there's no date for audit in October. So how is that going to fit in with the reporting from the audit committee? Is there going to need to be another meeting brought forward, and have all the changes been made? Because for the previous report, the action plan has a date that's not in the future because of the changes going to be there. So it's just about ensuring that all the different action plans and reports and the dates that are committed to are going to be actual dates that we're having audit committee, and that we've got audit committee when we need to have it.
Convener, I might be able to help. Yes, you're quite correct. We've got a date scheduled in September, I think September the 24th, and it would be necessary to look at delaying that meeting if we get assurance that the audit will be presented in October. So we've got a date in mind. I'd have to agree that with the convener and then advise committee members. We'd also need to maybe just discuss with Isabel just how moving a meeting in from September to October impacts on her work plan and her reporting process. So we need to look at that. I probably need to double check with Pauline, because I did notice that the report mentions 18th of November. It's considered a date for completion, but if you're now saying October, then we'd work to the end of October.
Yes, that date's a mistake. That was from a previous draft of the report, that November date. Yes, apologies.
Thanks. Then I would work with the convener and Isabel just to make sure we can revise the schedule of meetings to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you.
Update their own action log to say that it's, Mr. Benny might be pleased to know that that's an extra month to finalise those two reports.
Yes, because there was that thing about the action log as well, that it was a date that's no longer going to be an audit committee meeting. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? No? We're happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay. Then I'll duly close this meeting, and I hope you all have a nice day wherever you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.